Let's call to order here in our work session of October 22nd, 2024. We will go down to what's generally considered general business. And item A is initial council input into the business operating plan development. So I guess, Doug, you're going to be taking the road here, okay? Because I think some of us have provided a little input to you. And
Right.
this is next step. So go ahead.
So I've been through 3 strategic planning processes with the village, and sometimes at the end of our retreats, I feel like, I don't know if I know any better what council wanted after that process than I did before. And so this is an attempt to try to get council input in at the beginning. We do this with all of our employees. They meet in departments and they have this input discussion. So they say, what trends do we see happening in the next few years? What should we be adjusting and doing differently as we develop the next 1-year budget and 5-year strategic operating plan? So that's what I want to do with us tonight. I'll be honest, I have a little concern that we start talking about all these different things and the discussion goes a little off the rails. I want to do it by goal, and the intent is not to talk about all these things, but to just put them out there and then let us evaluate them, put some data behind it, and then at our strategic retreat, we'll have all day to talk about it so we can flesh it out much more then.
That's the December 3rd meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
So if that sounds okay, we'll move forward. I got some input from you, and I combined it into these slides. So you can feel free to kind of explain what your thought process was on some of these. But in general, safeguard the community. John, you put on here KPIs for basically all of these. I don't want to speak for you, but I think maybe you're saying that we don't, staff can use those KPIs. We don't necessarily need to report all of those KPIs to council.
Yeah, I think as I reflected on going through that process last year, what I think the problem was it was focused. We literally almost went through each one of those things. And that, I think, puts council at a level of granularity below where we ought to be. And I wasn't even sure why I started noting that as I put these out. But I took the last year's strategic planning book, and so I would say there was one interesting thing that came out of that, which we'll get to in a couple of slides. So I just noted that there were 26, but where I think we needed to focus, and I don't pretend that this is all-encompassing, is on the code enforcement changes and on Station 93, trying to drive us to a decision there. That's been limping along for a number of years. We have data about it. We may not have everything we want. I also suggested in a previous email that we give staff, as they're going through the Birdie process, those questions that we wanted answers to, so that whenever it comes time to look at that, I'm not saying, well, what about this, what about that, and they don't have the answers. So hopefully that's not to try to subvert or alter the Birdie process, to augment the Birdie process.
Yep. No, that's good.
When I got down to the detailed data issues, these were just individual things from the document last December that struck me as worthy of council thinking about or asking staff to think about, because this is not designed to say that only council input should be considered. We need to encourage, I certainly encourage staff to come to us and say, hey, council, you got to look at this. We think this is important, and that is perfectly okay. With respect to the 26 KPIs, if those are felt to be important to staff, by all means, they should keep them. I just don't think we need to be looking at 26 things here, and if I remember, the total's 187 across the 9 things.
Yep, that's great.
But that was kind of the background to how I tried to, and by the way, I forgot all about the PDO rewrite. That should be in here somewhere. Maybe not on this.
Yeah, probably the neighborhood development,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I too would like to see the number of KPIs, the focus shrunk, but I think it's important and the staff would sort this out, for us to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of them, so that we just don't see everything we did great, and we learn some of the things that are, people don't think highly of us. I mean, we get that chart every year on the what's that called? The community survey important satisfaction assessment. And I like to go back on the website and look at the previous years. And the consistency is amazing as to what our residents come back to us with. And so, you know, it does help me say, geez, that is where we really need to do some focus. If for 4 years in a row they talk about code enforcement, well, there may be something to that. And so what I would suggest is figure out a way to make sure we get presented a picture of what this is. Like in the recent survey, and one of the things that I meant to bring the pie chart of this, but I just printed this out. You guys, I thought, smartly asked the questions as to enforcement on short-term rentals, so that we're no longer flying blind. We'll have a little more information.
Yep.
And what I found interesting is that a high percentage think we're too lenient. According to this, 35%. Almost 50%, 47, think it's just about right. And then small percentage, 17, say too strict. So, and that is consistent about the view of the regulation without, not sure. They even pull those out. Too little, about right, too much, too lenient, too strict, just right. So that type of stuff helps my thinking when I'm trying to figure out what does the residents think about this, rather than what can sometimes amount to anecdotal information or the sort of the squeaky wheel getting the oil.
Yeah.
Pat, I agree with that. That didn't fit into Doug's kind of nine major strategic.
Yeah, I would put actually code and anything STR related actually in protecting the quality of neighborhoods, which would be the
Oh,
next goal.
okay.
But that's fine. So under safeguard the community, you know, my takeaway from what I received previously and this discussion is, you know, code enforcement, maybe that's a different goal, but whatever. Station 93, analyzing that, getting to a decision point on that. We can also maybe look at police patrol. That is something that came up a lot in the survey, is maintaining our level of safety. Want to make sure that we have the right staffing for police. But that's probably the two major focus areas under safeguard the community, unless anyone has anything else.
And again, the detailed data issue that I cited, this was from last year. That's not a survey question, so I couldn't look up a fiscal '24 answer. Maybe you have one. But from 78 to 30% is a pretty big drop. And what I'm thinking is that understanding it's difficult to recruit, period. It's been difficult to fill the number of slots we have available now. Do we need to think about trying to increase the total number of slots? That's a council level
I think there's
decision with input from the chief and other
I
people.
can't remember it, but I've heard Glenn Webb talk about why that number's gone like that, because of some actual changes he's incorporated. So
Yeah, I think the way we've measured it has changed over time. But then I think it's an appropriate discussion to have at our retreat, is like, what is the right number of police officers for us?
And Doug, the other day at the NAC meeting, I believe you sort of went over this with the members of the NAC about their input. So they also may have an idea or two that we haven't thought of.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Maybe you can factor that in. Okay.
All right, so under supporting high-quality neighborhoods, code enforcement, again, is one that, you know, the surveys always say. Updating or validating the comp plan, particularly the ETJ, I think that is also appropriate that we can talk about. Infill, residential, highway corridor overlays. Again, ETJ was mentioned, and updating the comp plan, or just ensuring the comp plan is meeting our current goals. I think those are all appropriate things to discuss. Anything else? Any other concerns?
I think I might alter the wording on development pressure in the ETJ. I think we should also concern ourselves with resident pressure, for lack of a better word, to maintain the ETJ. Because so that it's not a one-way argument the way it's posed there. So just a wording change.
And we can discuss, you know, what tools do we actually have to do that, which is fairly limited, but that is something we can discuss, yeah.
All right, so I have two to add.
Yep.
Maybe. Deer study, and street lighting. That's something we got feedback on, and I didn't see it anywhere else.
I thought we had that somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can put it, streetlights in a couple different places.
Yeah.
In my mind, I put it under transportation, but you can put it
Oh,
at a
okay.
few other
I
places,
didn't
yeah.
think about
so.
looking there, sorry.
Yep, no, it's fine.
And again, the detailed data issue, satisfaction with enforcement relatively flat in the mid-80s. Agree that effort on code enforcement's about right, declining. The gap between, to me, it's inconsistent. Those two things shouldn't be that far apart. And that could be a fault of the surveyor, though the questions asked, I don't know. But that seemed anomalous to me. I asked Matt McKirahan about that when I first noticed it, and he didn't have an answer for that. And there may
Yeah.
not be an answer. I'm
Right, right.
not pointing
I-
a finger at him, but.
I think it's just, there are two somewhat similar questions that have fairly different results, and it's like, how does that happen? Yeah. All right, so the next one, support a thriving business community. A week or so ago, or last meeting, we talked about, is there a need for a parking structure downtown, so we can look into that. The first floor retail regulation enforcement, that's also something we can talk about. Special events and their timing downtown, that is also something we've wanted to talk about. Create a genuine walking village downtown, the small area plan south, and these other ones kind of same thing. Maybe communication with business owners is also something we've been working on that we could update council on at that meeting. Anything else on business community?
This is the one that I found interesting. Most of the business owners that I've spoken with think that council doesn't really pay a lot of actual attention to them. And when I looked at, there were 7 KPIs there versus 26 other places and what have you. Maybe we just haven't thought about what we want to track.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was the one thing in the quote-unquote KPI analysis that stuck out to me as anomalous or worth thinking about.
Go ahead.
I brought up the small area plan.
That was my question. What was,
Well,
how do we do that? What are we doing?
in many ways, the objective of the small area plan and Pinehurst South was to create they used Innovation Hub, but we abandoned that. But it was to create an environment where small businesses could, in fact, grow and locate. And I'm not sure that we have that quite right just now. I would like to see that. I don't know whether we want to propagate Trotter Hills all over the place, but I think we need to revisit that small area plan and the regulating plan, and how it's aligned with the lots and the parcels, and whether or not it's even practical what we put together, and whether it really accomplishes what we want to accomplish, and maybe revisit what we want to accomplish. Maybe we want to rethink it and maybe make it more residential. I'm not sure, but I just feel uncomfortable with what we ended up with there. Maybe it's just me personally.
Well, right now there are 2 developments. One where they're building that Pinehurst South sort of cottages thing on Blake Boulevard that backs into I forget which road it is, but you probably know the name of it. And then on the other side of Highway 5 is the potential one. That, yeah, the Trotter, across from Trotter Hills.
Those are fully compatible. First of all, the Pinehurst South, the cottages that are being under construction, they're actually outside of the small area plan. But the one on the other side of the road, if you will, on the Trotter Hills side, is very much compatible with what we more talking about around the large parcels around the post office and so forth. I think we got to make sure we've got that right. I think it's worth a second look, let me put it that way.
Yeah, I have no problem there.
Well, and I would add on to that. The most comments from the survey had to do with growth. there were six that I could I think it was six, that I could identify as being pro-growth. You should embrace growth, don't fight it, whatever. The rest, I don't want to say that it's my inference that people were against growth, but there is certainly a segment of the population that basically says, I moved here, pull up the drawbridge, close the gates, nobody else. As we think about these larger parcels of land and what density would we allow development, I think we have to think of how many total people, we're at 18.5 now, and we've got, I'll say 600 buildable lots, whatever the number is. That's another 1,500 people there. What do we want beyond that?
I don't think we ought to debate the details right here.
No, no,
Right, right.
I'm saying it's just as a
But
general topic.
It's something that I'd like to bring up in some context.
I agree.
Yeah, and that, I think that's good. We also want to just keep in mind that we're also in the middle of a PDO and things, so
Right.
just keep all this in balance.
Oh, question, Doug. First floor retail storefront regulations, it's an S, enforcement. What are we facing there? I always thought there was sort of one out there that we had some complaints about. Is there something more to that first?
Issues in the past, now, as it so happens, if we're fully occupied now, that's fine. But are we fully occupied with retail type of establishments? In other words, establishments that people go into and out of on a normal basis. Whereas I'm not sure that's quite the case.
Yeah, I think the ordinance, I'd have to go back and look into this a little bit, but the intent was that once a space vacates, that it should only be filled by a retail establishment and not, a services, an attorney or something like that on at least the first floor retail.
Okay, well, I'm for reviewing it. I just think, obviously, we'll need to be clear as to the current status, because we don't have a vacant storefront right now.
Yeah. Anything else on business community?
No.
And under transportation, so better golf cart connectivity, and I would say multimodal in general, which could include golf carts, pedestrians, bicycles, and making interconnectivity with our own walkways, but also other communities. Improvements to major intersections, and then I would also add our cooperation and ongoing work with NCDOT, both on Highway 5 and their future development there, and on the traffic circle. I also throw in streetlights and adding them on dangerous intersections or other areas that we think is appropriate, but keeping in mind that we want to keep a balance there.
The question here, what is the goal here, was mine. Because I'm not sure that I understand, if whatever the plans are, if we could complete them, what is it that we want to achieve?
To me, the key word in this whole area is connectivity. In other words, can I get to other parts of the community? Can I get to other neighborhoods?
I mean,
Can
should I be
go-
able to ride
can
a
I-
bike?
Can I easily enjoy the features and functions and events that are going on in other parts of the village?
Should I be able to ride a bike from number 6 to Lake Pinehurst?
That could be
I don't
part of
know.
it. Yep.
Would be nice, I suppose, but
Yeah.
The, by the way, I might change the word streetlights to street lamps. Just, I know it's a minor thing, but I think the street lamps sounds more attractive and not as elucent, shall we say.
Just
Minor change.
this goal would also encompass like road pavement and pavement condition index. I think we are actually, compared to other communities, we do a very good job on this area. So if that is not an area that we need to discuss, that's good. Just want to make sure that we all agree on that.
Okay, I think we agree.
Preserve the environment. So we have
ETJ.
the ETJ here again. Stormwater would also be included here. Solid waste is also something we consider, but I think overall that's high satisfaction there and not a lot that we need to discuss.
What's the use of the word over-re-engineer?
Over-engineer.
over-engineer.
Over-engineering.
Well, we had an example this morning, or this afternoon, that they were building their basin to a 25-year storm standard rather
Instead
than
of a
a 10-year
10-year,
required
right.
in our engineering standards.
I got you. I misread I saw two
I
R's.
would add water conservation and taking a look at protecting green spaces.
And I think I would add, I think it would be here, working with Moore County Public Utilities on the,
For water issues, yeah.
on the overall water issue. However you want to word it, and
The
because
keyboard died, so.
water issues alone may take care of that as a topic, but it's, it keeps bouncing around. Okay.
All right, next, active living and cultural opportunities, so Parks and Rec and library. Again, walking trails, sidewalks could go here, or transportation, so that's a priority. Jack, you put on here, promote smaller scale cultural events. Not exactly sure what you meant by that.
Well, it seems like we're kind of focused on these big deals, these big events that we have in the village. And I'd like there to be a additional set of similarly scheduled smaller events, maybe like the Shakespeare event or other type of cultural events, art shows, you name it, smaller scale music events that are maybe not so grand and maybe don't attract, the entire region,
Sure.
that are
So-
really for the community.
You're saying promote, which usually means someone else is carrying the ball. And
Well,
would promote,
I
as
mean-
opposed to us running them.
Well, it could be us running them. I'm sorry to use the word promote there.
Well, I mean, like the Holly Arts Craft, that was a private enterprise and we assisted.
Well, that's true, but it's a rather large scale event.
It is, that's my point, is that we promoted something that a lot of other people.
No, I'm not saying we should not promote what we promote. I'm saying we should have a more rounded repertoire of cultural events that the community can engage in.
Yeah, so something between our art class that we offer at the community center and Live After 5. Yeah,
Right, we used to have Gathering at Given. I mean, that was a very small event that occurred every month with the library. They had someone come in and speak on various topics and so forth. That's a sample of a rather smaller event that could be.
There were several comments from the survey about offering things like that. One even was, could there be a senior drop-in center? Said, we know we've got one up Route 15501, but it's too far to go if you don't have a car and what have you. Could there be something in the village? It might not even have to be anything organized, just a place that people could go. In the category of intergenerational issues, most of them focused on more for youth.
Yeah.
But
At
there
one
were
time, we
some
did
that were not focused that way.
one time the village did a big study on constructing a performing arts center of some, not huge size, but of a size appropriate for the village. And that really didn't go anywhere at that time. But maybe with the new library, we're going to have the opportunity to have these kinds of events that are more in scale with the community and more appropriate.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Library, talk about that, but I think it's a good topic.
As well as the archives, because we're gonna have an archive and a museum there. That might be a nice setting for folks also.
okay. I think we're good here. Move on. Okay, manage a high-performing organization. I very much agree that we want to make sure that the things we measure are appropriate to the department and that the juice is worth the squeeze on some of those. Anything else in particular? The website and the newsletter, or takeaways on that as well?
And Pat, I think that was my line on balance, focus on achievements with shortcomings. That was my way of saying the same thing you did. We can't just pat ourselves on the back because we're at 98%. We've got to look at the things we're at 60, some of which we may not be able to do anything about, but we got to know what they are.
Good. Doug, with the edits that you've incorporated, you'll just send us out a revised one that we can use as a reference, or this will now be on December 30th in a.
Yeah, so
December
I'll take each of these points and we'll have slides prepared on these, and we'll have a discussion about, okay, if this is what we really want to do, are we going to switch resources and prioritize some of these things? So
Let me ask you a question. The screen you got up there, percentage of business satisfied with VOP communication. you have three numbers and then you have FY '23. What do those three numbers represent?
Those are the three numbers in the packet, which were reported as of, I assume they came from the business survey, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that's why I didn't read.
So in fiscal '21, it was 93%, in fiscal '23, it was 76. Those are the last 3 years.
Okay, well, maybe we want to, if we're going to use that, just clear it up so that. we know
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
fiscal
this is-
21. I understand, it's just.
That was my short,
I have not read the business survey, I was so engrossed in the
We have not
community.
got it yet, so I'm sure that number will like double. It'll be like 140, yeah. Okay. So the next one, attract, retain, and engage workforce. You know, we've talked about turnover, so we can talk about that more in depth. And then volunteer committee commission bench, I'm not sure what was meant by that. I think that was yours, John.
yeah, just I don't think we have a deep
Oh,
pool
a bench,
of
okay, got it.
people wanting to sign up for these things. And
Yeah, that's something we can look at, because part of the problem is like, oh, you're interested now, but there's no opening. How do we, you know, keep a active pool?
Yep.
Sure, that's something we can talk about.
Along those lines, one thing we can do is consider establishing another committee or something too, so that some residents who may not have no interest in planning and zoning, may want to be, have some sort of, like, I'm talking one like Friends of the Archives, this would be downstream, or Friends of the Library, so that there are citizens that have a little bit of a skin in the game and follow those issues, because not everybody's interested in, you know, how wide the shutters are on the homes in the Old Town.
Yep. Anything else on workforce? And maintain a healthy financial condition. I think we're there, but anything in particular you want to discuss? We have capital projects and budget and decision-making. I think that would be good. And it was brought up, we need to make sure we have accurate budget estimates. So I agree, we can try to do better on those. And we can only do so much, but we can at least try better.
but I assume we always try to make the best estimates we can, but they're estimates.
Yep.
And the world changes, so.
I've got no problem with it. This slide. General thing, I missed, where the harness track was.
So I think that would have been under cultural. So I agree, we can add harness track in here. That is a good thing to add.
Yep, good point.
Going back hopefully to 20,000 feet, the question I would ask is, as we extract from this council focus items, whatever we're actually going to discuss on December 3rd, should the organizing construct be the 9 strategic goals? Or should it be something else? And I ask that not because I have a specific recommendation.
Yeah, so I would actually break it down by our 9 goals and then 20 strategic objectives from there. So these would all fit in one of those 20 that rolls up into the one of the 9. But it'll work, trust me.
Sure, it'll work. I'm asking what the organizing principle should be. I think the output from this should be council's statement to staff, here's what we want you to work on, in addition to whatever else you bring to us, because we don't have all the good ideas.
Right.
By any stretch of the
Yeah,
imagination.
so for each goal or strategic objective, we'll have some data points, things we want to discuss, and from those, we ultimately want a decision or direction or confirmation from council that that's the correct direction to go.
I do think I guess it's Michael Bloomberg's famous statement, in God we trust, but everyone else please bring data. So we ought to be sure, bring your data forth as best we can. We have loads of it over years, and I enjoy it, but we really, we need to have it turned into something that helps informationally us to make the management decisions we should make and that you all think we should make. So that's my only comment there.
Good. So again, we'll take this and we'll prioritize things in December. Any other final comments from anyone?
Do you anticipate that December will have a binder with material related to this? Not a big fat one, but a skinny one or something?
Or some sort of slides that we can give you beforehand to review.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I just think we need something to work from.
Yep.
It'll be too,
I'm happy to have people extract data that they believe is relevant to whatever 6, 9, or 20 things we're going to discuss.
Right, yeah. So we probably have a KPI on something that's related to those items, and that's what we'll review.
But the KPIs are not the organizing entity, it
No,
is the
no.
strategic, no, terrific.
Good to move on?
yeah, I'm ready if you are. Okay, item B, discussion regarding the short-term rental regulations and enforcement. We have a memo.
Yeah, and there's a few major points on this, and I'll just kind of go over briefly, but this is, I get the impression from council, a very high priority. So one of the things that we wanted to discuss was what can we do now to improve compliance with this ordinance. So one is that we can increase the awareness of the ordinance. Kind of hard to believe that someone might not be aware, but there are people who don't read the paper or don't watch our meetings. So what can we do to make sure that they're aware of what the rules are and what they can or can't do? We bat around some ideas, and maybe an appropriate course of action would be to reach out to the county. If we can have a systematic process where we know a property turns over, maybe we can reach out to them and not only provide information about what you can or can't do with your property about an STR, but also provide, information about, general information about the village and our other ordinances. So that would be one option. We also have the newsletter that we have the opportunity to mail directly to each resident, so we can have an article about that and what we are currently doing, and just a reminder that that's out there. Another thing that we could potentially look into is small revisions to the ordinance. There's a couple of things that have come up a few times, and they keep bubbling to the top, is that we have our non-conforming use certificate that you could only apply for within a year. There have been people that have asked if they can still receive them. In order to do that, we'd have to reopen this ordinance and allow those to happen. So that is something we can consider in the future. Also, we have the occupancy limit, and the way it's written now can, some people can read it one way, some could read it another. We could simplify that so it doesn't refer to adults, and it would just be 2 occupants per bedroom plus 2 for the house. So that could make it a little simpler. One thing that has been brought up a lot in the past is software for tracking and managing compliance. So we
Hold
did.
on, I'm looking at your last sentence there. We could prohibit advertising properties that exceed the occupancy limit, as actual determination of occupancy of a residential unit by staff is nearly impossible. So we would incorporate that in a revision to the ordinance, and would there be penalties associated with that? How would that work? The prohibition on advertising, is there a fine to go with it if they ignore us, or we give them a warning? How does that?
Yeah, well, we can, if we're amending the ordinance, we can make it whatever we want. But the idea is that, are we ever going to see, the people in the house? No. But what we can see is the advertisement on the internet. And at that point, we can contact the owner and say, this is in violation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I sort of missed the ability to do that, to be honest with you. I hadn't caught that. So thank you.
My understanding is that some of these online systems, just Airbnb, VRBO, whatever the case may be, they have algorithms that end up putting in advertisements for how many folks can be there. And so you're running the risk of this also, that it's not the owner necessarily that's at fault, but it's this algorithm that's been created.
Yeah, I haven't confirmed this myself, but I've also heard that some of the advertising websites don't even list an occupancy, which seems a little weird, but that could also be an issue.
Some of them want you to make the decision you want the property before they let you go to the details of when it's available and et cetera, et cetera. So, okay, well, I think that's worth looking at.
Isn't the idea to try to, I mean, there are reports of some people who have slammed the garage door shut and put bunk beds in what used to be the garage. So rather, the three-bedroom house, they'll list as occupancy for 12 or something like that.
Yeah,
That's what we're talking about. It's not people stretching
yeah, I
their
mean,
person or whatever.
that's a building compliance issue that, it's separate from STRs, like, you're not allowed to do that, in any house. But more what this would be like, you have 4 bedrooms, but you're advertising it for 12 people can stay there.
Or 24, as
Yeah,
happened in
something.
one case.
Yeah.
Those advertisements are the easiest for our citizens to catch. Okay, I mean, those, enough people are looking at that. As soon as they see one, I don't know about you guys, sometimes I get it. I receive it and I say, oh my gosh. But, so between their vigilance and whatever occurs with the software package, and whatever we might change to the ordinance, I think that is probably something that is very, very correctable, and at a minimum, a strong deterrent. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the software, we have met with a few vendors about their abilities. So there are some limits to what they can and can't do. Essentially, they go through the internet and scrape information about what is listed and advertised and what days they have available and not available, and it comes up with the information on whether or not it's a advertisement or a listed STR, and we can confirm the location of those. That can be helpful because that takes a lot of staff time. What it does have limits in that, will we know for sure that money was exchanged on some of these? Will we know how many days? Has it for sure been over the 15 days? Some of those we can go back and look at history, but it's not the most firm information that if we're going after someone for compliance, we may be on, waffly ground there.
Well, it's one more tool in the toolbox, because that's
Yeah.
what it is. And we no longer,
So one thing that I would say that as right now, most of our enforcement is done by complaint-based. We do some proactive reach out and looking to make sure if there's something blatantly out there that we can go after. But if we wanted to be more effective in doing that, the software is a good tool to do that. And at that point, it would save time compared to us doing it by hand.
And the majority of things we do regulate seem to be by complaints that are on there. Last sentence in that that paragraph, it is still unclear to what extent the software will aid in actual compliance with the regulations. How much is this tool in the toolbox going to cost where we don't know how it's going to help us?
Yeah, so there are a range of estimates. So on the low end, it would be 20,000, and then others have quoted about 40,000.
Okay.
There
So-
is the ability to, different features, but probably around 20,000.
Okay, before I spend $20,000 or $40,000 out of my personal accounts, I want to make sure that I've got a reason for doing it. And if it's unclear as to the extent of what it's going to aid us in the compliance, I've got some concerns about that.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that. The difficult part for us is we can't know exactly what this software will do and provide without having it. So,
right.
Well, that was part of the presentation you received, but you're telling me you still don't know that.
yeah, to the fullest extent, yeah. And we can go back and look at more demonstrations and try to dig into this a little bit more, but until we have to enforce the ordinance based on information provided by the software, it'll be difficult to know how effective it is.
Okay, and are there other people that have to get hired to run the software or to address any issues that it will give us?
Depending on how aggressive we want to be in enforcement, if we move away from mostly complaint-based, then we would need additional staff to do that.
I thought I saw that the term was a half an FTE in one of those memos.
And we have 1.5 code enforcement FTEs. If we bumped up one of those to full-time,
Okay,
We
so
could-
it's
that would work.
it's a one staff person, and with an experiment of 40,000 on a well-tested and respected software that we're looking at. Isn't that fair to say that the company, or at least a couple of the companies whose names were mentioned, are considered state-of-the-art in this world? And we have, one of them isn't one of them we already have a contract with to provide us other things? Granicus? Okay.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and they may be state-of-the-art. I mean, Microsoft Word is state-of-the-art, but it's not going to help us with STRs. My question is if we're going to spend $20,000 to $40,000 on a piece of software, let's make sure we're doing it for a reason
Yes.
that's going to resolve something and solve a problem for us.
Well, I
To say the idea we're going to experiment, I question that.
At nothing else, I mean, we've been discussing and arguing pretty strong, but actively discussing how big the problem is now for close to 2 years. And no one seems to be able to get a handle on how big the problem is. In other words, how many there are, how many there were, how big is it growing? And without software, without some outside help, I think we're going to continue to have these discussions that are fruitless.
Okay, so you're saying that the software will tell us how big the problem is.
It will certainly give us a data point that is more useful than just discussing it without any additional knowledge.
And what are you basing that on?
I'm basing that on what they claim to be able to do.
Okay, have you listened to the presentations on there?
I've seen a few.
Okay, well, I'm just referring off of the people that we have on our staff that are actually listening to the presentations, and they put it in there. It is still unclear to what extent the software will aid in actual compliance to regulations.
Well-
So my point is, if they don't know what it's going to do to help us, why are we buying it?
Well, let's answer your question. We'll in determining what is the lay of the land out there. Good.
I don't think, Jeff, that this is something where you say, well, we're going to spend 40 and it's going to generate 60.
I'm not even talking about generating. I'm just telling you, before I buy a drill, I need to make sure I'm putting a hole in something.
I
okay?
understand.
It's a tool.
It is a tool. And let me ask you this, do other communities use this tool? Okay. So 6 use it.
Actually, there are many more.
Okay, so there are 6 examples of communities that have done that. Good. Good to know. I think the investment of 30,000, whatever it is there, in the software tracking and for management compliance issues, I think that is a step we should take. I think it's something that our residents would expect us to take. If you look at that data just off the ETC survey results, our residents are most skeptical of how we enforce the short-term rental ordinance. It's clear from that. So I think it's a vote of confidence, I think, for us to adopt something along these lines, because it says we're listening to you, and we're going to find out more.
Okay, so you're going to end up spending $20,000 to $40,000 and having an FTE to get a vote of confidence from the
Among
from the
other things.
our citizens.
Among other things. It's not just for one thing.
Okay, well, you still can't tell me what it's going to do to help us on there. No, I'm going to get outvoted, but I want to bring this point up
I
that
just
you
told you how
are
it's
going to
gonna-
spend $20,000 to $40,000 on a tool and hire an extra FTE to address the stuff,
Yes.
and you don't know exactly what you're doing to solve.
No, I know what I'm going to answer questions of residents, number one, who have told us in the survey that's a month old that they think we are not doing a good job enforcing the short-term rental.
Okay, so you
Okay.
want to do something.
So that's one thing it's going to do. Two, I think it's going to answer questions that many people have, where they were guesstimating the number of STRs in this community at 400 a year ago, and it's now estimated as high as 700. So we've gone from 350 actually to 700. 100% increase estimates. We need to stop estimating if we can get a little harder data. And that's what, to me, that's what it's about.
Okay.
It's going to be probably impossible to put a price on improved compliance with this.
Okay. I'm just bringing it up. You're talking about paying $20,000 to $40,000 on a tool. You're talking about an extra FTE, and you don't know exactly what it's going to do to solve the
Jeff,
problem. Got it.
Jeff,
Okay, I got it.
Jeff, when we voted on the library, you voted to spend $2.1 million more than a proposal that Doug had gotten that would just have relied us to go have a conversation with the Park Service. $2.1 million, not 20,000.
Okay. And then I'm not going to rehash the library right now. Right now, we're talking about STRs. We're talking about a software. You've got our staff saying it's unclear as to what extent it's going to do to help us. I'm bringing up the point.
I understand,
So,
but the
let's go from
point,
there.
but the point you're bringing up is use of funds for which we are supervising, use of village
I
funds.
got it. No, this committee can agree to this. I understand that.
No, no,
It's our funds to use.
Or what?
Well, it's actually the taxpayers' funds, but okay.
they're all
It's the
taxpayers'
village.
funds, and
Got
we're
it.
in charge of that.
And,
Okay.
and the taxpayer, no, let's drill down on that. The taxpayers are telling us that they have a degree of reluctance as to how much we are enforcing the STR. So you're right, it's the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely correct. It's their money, and we should use it cautiously. I don't think $30,000, $40,000 and an extra FTE on an issue that has been front and center in our community for 3 years. I don't think that's an unreasonable amount of money when we've got a budget of $32 million.
If
and
it could answer the
and
question and improve
lapse 15
compliance and regulations, I would agree to that.
Well, there's no guarantee of answers in life, for God's sakes.
Okay,
All
well,
right. I
our
mean,
subject
what do
matter
you-
experts didn't
I-
put that in there because they just think it's going to help out.
I can't guarantee the Yankees are going to win the World Series. I just think they got a good shot at it.
I will agree with that, unfortunately, but we won't go to the Yankees either. So.
I don't think there's guarantees in this. We exercise our reasonable judgment. We've done a lot of due diligence here. The staff has done it. We've done it. We've heard from residents.
All right.
I think it's I'm impressed with the reasonableness of this approach. And I know we're not finished. We've got a little more things to do there.
Okay.
But
Well,
so-
I hear what you're saying, and I am not impressed with it because I still think that statement of it being unclear is a critical statement. Okay?
Okay.
All right, moving on to tax compliance. So we're all clear. The village does not receive any hotel occupancy tax from STRs or any other hotel here in the village. But we do receive a portion of the sales tax. So that 2.25% would go to us. We talked to the county regarding their ability and to what extent they have gone after short-term rentals in the county. They are looking for solutions as well. So we have, talked with them about what we've looked at and what might possibly work for them. So we are currently in a cooperative relationship with them to try to help their collection of STR sales tax.
Okay. Doug, do we know now, or can the county tell us or the state tell us, what is the number of dollars that they transmit to us from the taxes they collect on STRs?
So the sales tax is just mixed with all the other sales tax.
I understand, so the answer
so
is
no.
they can't segregate this money. It just goes into a sales tax pot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe if we get some more data, we can figure out a way to drill down on that.
I've also heard from Convention and Visitors Bureau that even though people like Airbnb and VRBO collect the tax for people who list on their services, when they submit it, it is a lump sum. It is not detailed in any way. Here's a check for $32,000.
Yeah, and in my conversation with the county tax administrator, he said that would go to the state, and it was unclear to me how they get a portion of that back to the county.
Okay. I'd like to raise obviously a related issue, it's SDR related, and that has to do with what I'm going to call somewhat of the low-hanging fruit that I think are out there. The ordinance was passed in 2022. And we're approaching the 2-year anniversary. So, and obviously, it pertained to people who had STR, properties have STRs in the past. Okay, and a bunch of folks came in, we've issued 277 NCUCs in that first year that there was allotted. My question has to do with, when we now know that there seems to be based on this data we read earlier, a number of permits, larger number of permits than I thought we had. So we'll figure out if they're the new ones. I'm only interested in the new properties, okay? Because that's the ones I hear from that are most frustrating to folks is there used to be an empty lot next to me. There's a new house there, and it's a short-term rental. Now, I don't know if it's actually a short-term rental, because the person's telling me that. That's their perception of what goes on there. To me, the new houses that have been built in the last 2 years should be our first sort of test as to whether or not someone has set up a short-term rental in violation of the ordinance. So I would encourage us to have some relatively simple plan. We go to those, whatever they are. Is it 163? Is it 76? And we can remind them of the ordinance. And once we actually we can find out if any of them got NCUCs, which would be odd. But it's the new construction that the few people I hear from on this, it's not a lot of people, that is their biggest frustration. How did that new house become an STR? So I asked staff to figure out that, and how do we play offense on this? There's no reason to be defense. I don't like to be just complaint-oriented. Complaints are fine, but you can cut down on a lot of complaints if you play some offense. So anyway, that is a little suggestion of mine that I feel would just doing our due diligence and exercising our communications effort. We should put to rest this idea that new homes that didn't exist before are now short-term rentals. And if they happen to be short-term rentals, then that's a cause for the village to take the action it should under the ordinance.
Yeah, certainly new buildings are much easier to enforce the ordinance again because we don't have to prove that they were never worked as an STR
That's
previously.
my point. But if all of them are not STRs, it doesn't matter. But we need to make that determination. And since we know we don't have that many, what do we have? 60, whatever the number is, of permits.
76 last year.
All right. So, and they're not all. They may or may not be all residential. Those 76. But, okay. I just want to interject that into our plan that's being developed. I tend to like much of what's said here. It's rather simple and focused. It's utilizing technology, and where I think it's a good exercise of the village resources.
I have an interjection as well. First of all, I think it's a good place to start, and I agree, Pat, with your comments too. My only comment at this juncture is I think we need to proceed very cautiously, if at all, around reopening the window for NCUCs. I think that that will not be well received by our residents. And we need to have a conversation. Doesn't have to happen now, but we need to have a conversation around that before we ever implement it.
All right.
By opening the window, do you mean they still have to prove that before 2022 they were in that business? Is that correct?
Correct. Okay. It's not for anything that happened after it. It's for the people who, for whatever reason, did not submit an application. And, you know, it's the closest thing we have to an inventory of STRs. So it's, and we're doing it within the code, in the law of using our zoning ordinance. But I'm fine with us having a discussion about it, and we certainly would have to take action because it would deal with an ordinance.
Yeah.
So we've got some time on that.
Absolutely.
Just a reminder, it was completely voluntary, so yeah, if some people may chose not to have done it for various reasons.
One of the biggest surprises that I experienced in this topic for the last 2 years is that what it was, 330-something people came in and submitted an application. I would not have bet on that for an NCUC. To me, it's a sign of cooperation from our residents who are STR owners, or if they're not our residents, they are investors that want to conform as best they can with our codes here. And so my hat's off to those people who came in for the application and those many who received it. That's why I'd like to open it again.
I'm kind of surprised at the amount also, to tell you the truth. And the voluntary compliance, but as you said, it's the closest thing we have to an inventory or a registry.
Voluntary. Any other comments, Jack? Barb, anything you wanted to add? John? Dr. Morgan? So what do you see as our next step, Doug?
So Alex and I can talk to vendors, see if there's any other information we can get from them to make us feel better, but we can proceed down that course to see what that looks like and get a firm proposal to come back to council with.
And just for the record, when you're going down that for the software, that's a 4-to-1 on there. As I'm assuming all 4 of you wish to do that. I do not.
Okay. So be it. We don't need to have a roll call. And any changes to an ordinance, we would have a formal vote on, but, okay.
And we'll look at some communication options. Maybe we update our website, our FAQs, and see if there's anything we can do with that.
I think that's one of those easy things that brings a comfort level to the residents who we know go to our website a lot, and it's not very difficult to do, and especially if we have good news that we're going to do more about it. So, okay, other topics. We have other business. We talked about a lot of other business under the other business of the regular session. Is there any other business anything? No. So our next meeting will be in November, before Thanksgiving.
I believe it's the 12th.
It's the 12th, and we'll.
And we've only got 2 meetings before the end of the year.
Yep. And hopefully we can get.
Plus a really long strategic retreat. Just
Right,
want to
well,
point that out.
Semi-meeting. Hopefully we can move the ball down the field on a bunch of these things, not little things that we've been working on, and do look particularly at advisory committees. And again, I encourage the public, if anyone's still watching out there, if you want to be part of your government and you want to do more than just complain, apply to be on an advisory committee, and we welcome that involvement. And you can watch the advisory committees. Go to our website and pull up the video of planning and zoning and historic preservation, so you can see your fellow citizens at work. And if you feel like you can do a job, please join us. Thank you. I will entertain anybody who wants to do a motion.
I motion to adjourn the work session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.